Hey there friends, my name's Hazy J, and on this week's episode we're going to be talking about the creative mind and mental health issues and how the two seem to sometimes be one. But what really came first? Was it the chaos or the creativity? Let's get stuck in and find out. Now for me personally, music has always been a safe place. It's been somewhere where I can find comfort and almost feel more at home than when I am really at home. I am someone, if you haven't noticed, I've got a lot of records. I'm a big album nerd. I find myself falling in love with albums almost in a rather intimate way, so that I know them front to back, and it's a real sense of comfort that I find. That's just what music does for me, listening. But when I'm playing, it helps me express who I am. It helps me get out all those thoughts and that shittiness inside. It's quite cathartic. And then when I'm playing live, there's just nothing quite like that. And so music as a whole really does encapsulate a lot of my happiness, and it is a huge part of what gets me through each and every day. But unfortunately, trying to make it as a musician or a creative, I've found that this pursuit has also hindered my mental health and has also caused quite a lot of issues. In the pursuit of my happiness, of my goals, I found super self-destructive tendencies that pop up and that have been very difficult for me to escape over the years. I've chased dreams and projects so hard that I burnt myself out before I could finish them, and then failed to actually finish them. You know, it is good for your art at one point, but it's also kind of bad for your head and where that's taking you down. So it's a very interesting thought to think about how creativity and art can be something so beautiful and healing and wonderful on one hand, but also can cause so much pain and suffering for those trying to create, trying to make a name for themselves in this world. So I guess the question that I'm trying to get to is creativity and chaos symbiotic? Do they have to be always together? Or is there some kind of balance, or can you have one without the other? So I did a bit of research online and found some really interesting facts. Now, Professor Jameson wrote an article after studying the link between manic depression and creatively minded people. She found that creatives are up to 20 times more likely to be bipolar, up to 10 times more likely to have depression, and up to 18 times more likely to commit suicide. She observed that manic depressives in their high or manic state think faster and associate more freely. When they're manic, people need less sleep, have unusual energy, remarkable focus, and inflated self-belief, all of which allow the production of original work. The interesting thing that I'm kind of seeing from all this research is the fact that it's not exactly that one and the other are the same. It's the fact that in the pursuit of an artistic career, you're also going to pursue a lot of behavior that is also similar to people with mental health issues. So while she observed that people in those manic states, they get a lot of things done, they can think more freely, and they can get really focused, she also found that on the flip side of that is depression. It's the price that we're paying for the bouts of productive work. So if you ever think about a project, an album, even a show that you've looked forward to, you've built up for months and months and months, and then once it's done, instead of feeling, you know, a great sense of achievement or success, you end up feeling almost relief that it's over. And that relief, that downtime afterwards, is just you releasing all of that pressure, because as an artist, you're building up everything, you're so focused on the art, the product, and what's going to happen, that when it gets to it and it's released, you kind of end up cathartically releasing a lot out of yourself as well. And so you are going to pay for that if you're not ready for it. And unfortunately, a lot of us pay for that in the way of depressive episodes that can last weeks, months, some of us even years. So this does kind of show that there is some kind of scientific link between creativity and mental health issues.
Now, psychiatry professor Terence Ketter identified many factors common to both bipolar and creatives, things like changeable feelings, high intuition, curiosity, and open-mindedness. He also goes on to say that the arts are more dangerous than any other occupation because they require sensitivity to a large extent. If you go too far, you can pay a price. You can be too sensitive to live in this world.
Unfortunately, that is a fact of being a creative, because you have to be sensitive. You're showing what's going on inside of you, and that can be really hard, especially if people react to that in weird ways. It's not just the fact that they're reacting to your art, they're also reacting to a reflection of you, which you can then bring super hard back onto yourself and end up beating yourself up, leading to those things like anxiety, depression, and whatever else is going on. So Inherently, it does feel like the pursuit of being an artist is something that is always kind of going to be a very stressful situation just due to the nature of the job itself. There are many other jobs and vocations that are going to cause just as much stress. I think because of the personal nature and how individual each piece of work that you put out and each thing that you interact with is, it's going to hurt that little bit more because, you know, if you're an artist and you lose face, you're losing part of yourself and part of your identity. As we've just seen and looked over, there does seem to be a scientific link between the two, the creative and the chaos. But I'd like to explore this duality of creativity a little more. Do they have to come hand in hand with each other? If you're born with a prevalence to mental health issues, or if you develop them, are you going to become a creative person? Or if you're a creative person, does that mean that you're most likely going to suffer? Yes, no, maybe. It's individual and completely up to you. The way that I personally see it is not always, but it does mean that you're going to be at a bit of a higher risk in putting yourself into more issuous situations, I suppose. You can't write a sad song unless you've known sadness, but to flip that on its head, if you're writing nothing but happy songs, making nothing but happy art, you're going to be living in a happier world in your head. So usually that's going to translate to a better mental health state. If you can then work even harder and learn that you can separate yourself from the art a little bit, remember that you're creating for yourself, that's where you can kind of start to dance between the creativity and the chaos and use them to help each other rather than use them to fight against each other. Now, that's me. I don't think that it's always going to be hand in hand, but some people in this world do think so. I found an interesting quote from Eric Meisel, who was the author of the Van Gogh Blues.
And he said, I think 100% of creative people are going to experience existential depression, which is a result of their desire to find meaning in life through their work. He then goes on to talk about how most of the time when you are creating, that you are not experiencing life as successful or meaningful.
Now, I know this feeling all too well. A couple of years ago, 2019, I spent almost an entire year in a studio writing, completely invested in the process of producing my first record. But in this, I suppose, manic state of trying to get all these things done and trying to produce the best work, I also completely disregarded almost every other part of my life. My friendships, my relationship at the time, my work, my job was really hard to hold down when I was running around because the most important thing to me was always the music, the art, and I would put that before anything else. Because art is so personal to you, you don't want to put it down. So I definitely shot myself in the foot, but in doing so, I also learned a lot about myself. You know, it sucks that I had that experience, but I'm also grateful for it because it means that now, moving forward, I know where to put my energy so that at the end of the day and at the end of the project, I'm still left with some spoons in the drawer that I can use for myself. It's hard being an artist because in a normal job, in a 9 to 5, whatever, you've got a time to clock in, a time to clock out. You've got a boss telling you what your KPIs are and what you need to do. And if you don't do those things, then you're not going to do a good job. Whereas as an artist, you don't have a time to clock in or a time to clock out. You've just got you, yourself, and the art. And so without knowing whether it's going to be something that's fruitful or something that just completely flops, you can spend so much time on something not knowing, and without having guidelines to shape your workday and your life, you are going to be in a lot more of a floaty existence. And when you're in a floaty existence, you don't always know what's going to happen. It becomes very unpredictable. And that unpredictability can breed anxiety. When you mess up and something unpredictably happens, it can breed depression and so on and so forth. So I'm not saying that it's something that is always going to happen to you if you're a creative person, but I'm saying that you are at a much higher risk of falling into traps like anxiety, depression, etc. Now, madness, according to Socrates, is the channel by which we receive the greatest blessings. Keeping that in mind, I say that one of the biggest keys to working through mental health issues while trying to maintain your creativity is embrace the madness, but also learn to understand your madness before you really learn how to control it and make it something positive. If you take the time to understand things like what your limits are, how feedback affects you, if you learn these things about yourself, you're going to be in a much better position to be able to tackle them when they do come at you. I think that the best way to manage this and to look at this and to kind of visualize it is to think of a long, thin line down the middle of a road that you're walking in. That line is your creative path. And on one side you have your creativity, all of the beautiful ideas, all of the things that you want to do, all your dreams, your hopes, your wishes. And on the other side you have all that doubt, that pain, that fear, that scared, that anxiousness. And we're trying to find that thin line in between. And once you can find that thin line by understanding both sides and how you personally react to them, you can start walking that thin line. And yeah, you might teeter and totter and go one side or the other every now and then, but the idea is to keep a little bit of a foot in both worlds so that you can then learn how to control it and produce the best work that you possibly can. I know that I can give you all of the advice in the world, and I know that I've given myself all of this advice before, and we're going to promise ourselves that we'll do it, and we're going to lock in, and we're not going to beat ourselves up, but at the end of the day, we probably still will because we're artists, and it's almost the right of an artist to be a little mad because you can't explain it, but it's addictive. It's something that you want to give every little piece of you because you know that once you call it finished and you push it out into the world, there's no more going back, there's no more changing, and that's a very, very scary thing. Of course you're going to be a little crazy, of course you're going to skip meals and lose sleep, but know that if you are doing that, there's always a better way, and there's always a better way that can make your art better as well. So to recap, I truly don't believe that mental health and creativity have to live together in all senses of the word. I do believe that they can be separate from each other. However, if you are going to pursue a life in creativity, know that it is going to pose more risk of having issues with your mental health. If you're a creative person that's struggling, I want to know what you're doing to understand yourself and to get through those struggles so that it doesn't affect your art. If it is affecting your art, what do you think that you can do, but what do you think that's holding you back? There's so many different things. I want to start a discussion about this. I want to explore it so badly because I don't know a single creative person that doesn't have some kind of thing going on in their head, and I think that we all need to start looking after each other. I just want to say thank you so much to everyone for watching this video. I hope that you've enjoyed it and learned something. I know that I've learned a lot making it. So until next week, my friends, my name's Hazy J, and I'll see y'all then.